Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast, where we help people to combat the negativity that inundates their daily lives with a positive perspective and positive actions. Today's guest is Joe Casciani. Dr. Joseph Casciani has a 30-year history in long-term care as a psychologist and manager of mental health practices. He was awarded the first contract for the California Department of Aging in 1982 to develop mental health training for the state's nursing homes. He is a past president and of psychologists in long-term care and former board member of the National Consortium of geropsychology training programs, and that's a mouthful. He has an online program on reducing anti-psychotic medication in nursing homes and other publications. And in 2018, he extended his professional interest in aging into a new venture, the Living to 100 Club. He also hosts a weekly podcast and is an author of Living Longer is the New Normal. So please welcome to the show, Dr. Joseph Casciani. Doctor, welcome, Joe. I appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks very much, Bob. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to speaking with you. This is my, my favorite topic because I really think there's an important message to get out to listeners out there about living longer, but also, managing what comes along. And some of those changes aren't always the most pleasant, but we learn to adapt.
And that's a big feature of it, is that, we do learn to adapt. It's necessary, and, it's part of the journey we have called life. So if we can, why don't we tell people more about you? How did you get to where you are today? You've got a long history there. So tell us about how you got there.
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm a psychologist. I've been a psychologist here in California since early 80s. I started working with the county mental health program in San Diego. They had opened a brand new geropsychiatric unit, which is an inpatient psychiatric unit for seniors. I was there for a couple of years, and then I got this contract with the Department of Aging to write a training manual for nursing homes on mental health topics. It was the first time California put any money into training their nursing homes on mental health.
Right.
So it was a real privilege. We wrote the manual and then did some 36 webinars and seminars around the state to train people on the content. Anyway, after that, Medicare changed their authorization for psychology services, and I started a group practice with a physician, and we contracted with nursing homes and provided psychologists to work with the residents that staff would refer to us for depression, adjustment problems, a lot of psychological issues. We did that. I left that company and then started my own doing the same thing. It's been a fun ride, I have to say. In 2019, I sold my practice and really devoted full time to Living to 100 Club. And, as I may have mentioned, that's my interest in reaching the consumer, people who are living in the community and, healthy, maybe not so healthy, but looking for more information about successful aging. And my niche is beyond successful aging, how to make it over those hurdles. That's the challenge, because we're always going to have hurdles, right? There's always going to be bumps and potholes. And how do we make it over those? And how do we not get thrown and throw our hands up and say, I'm done? So that's my vision for the Living to 100 Club.
And that's good to know, because there are people that, as we get older, the mortality rate, the friends pass away, loved ones pass away. And there's that piece of depression, if you will, that sets in of they want to be with those people. They miss them. There's not much for them to do anymore. What are some suggestions of, I know a lot of places dealing with these myself, my parents and friends that have gotten older and gone through the nursing home facilities and so forth down here in Florida. And that it's like they got to keep their minds active. What are some things that we can do to help with that? Some activities or whatnot that people can do to, I know when things people pass, there's that depression, but getting through that. What are some activities they can do for that?
Sure. Well, a lot of it has to do with, the very topic that you talk about on your website, and that's mindset and staying positive and not letting the negative get in the way. I mean, that's really important. And I like to talk about thinking styles, because there are a few different topics within our mindset and thinking patterns that really have an influence on how well we cope. And the first one is, how do we interpret events? How do we explain things that happen to us? Because we can, look at them in a positive frame of mind, or we can look at them in a negative frame of mind. And, let's say I have a fall and I'm in a wheelchair, and how do I explain that event? Or this is just something that's going to be in store for me for my future. It looks like more decline coming down the road. Or do we say, well, it's an unfortunate event. I'll get through my rehab and I'll get back on my feet and keep moving forward. So it's a single event. How do we explain that event that happens? A second consideration is, do we look at things from a positive frame of mind or a negative frame of mind? There's the old adage, and it's been said a million times: is the glass half full or half empty?
Right.
And I say, an 8-ounce glass with 4 ounces of water is both half full and half empty. So you decide, right? It's your decision. You can look at things and see them in a positive way. I love to do this exercise when I'm working with large groups in a big room, and I divide the room up into half. Right half, I want you to look around the room and find everything that's wrong with it, right? All the stains on the carpet, the marks on the walls, maybe the plants that are not living so well, or fixtures that aren't doing well. And then I ask the other group on the left side of the room, just, all right, you look around and find everything that's good about the room. The sunlight coming in, maybe the fixtures, maybe how clean everything is, the furniture. And then I go back and forth. I ask each group to share what they observed. And then I explain to them, look, it's the same room. We're all seeing the same room. What are you looking for? Are you looking for what's good, or are you looking for what's bad? So it's that positive and negative. I think that's an important way to explain things that come along in our life. And the third thinking style has to do with, what can I control? We get frustrated when we try to control things that we really have no control over. Obviously the weather or the stock market, or big things like that. But all we do have control over is our reaction to things.
Right.
People that work in stress management say that, it's not the stress that gets to us, it's the way we interpret the stress, or it's the way we explain these events. So things that we can control are our thoughts, our attitudes, our beliefs, our values, the way we approach others, interact with them. Those are what we can control. And let's not waste our energy on things that we can't control, because people get very frustrated and kind of worked up a lot of times about that. So let's recognize the difference. I think those are three basic kind of perspectives to keep in mind, Bob, that kind of lightens the load a lot there, and
It does. And it's with older people, you do see that. I remember when my dad was getting older and he would have trouble starting to button his shirt. And that, he was one that always did everything himself. But getting to understand that, one, we're here to help. Okay, you've got help all around you. We're here to help with that. But that frustrated him. And reminding, it's hard for that to realize that you can't do what you used to do.
Yeah, that's very hard. It's very hard for people. We're independent. We rely on ourselves. We can take care of ourselves. And at some point, there are some things that we need help with. And, giving up the car keys is a big one. That I'm giving up my independence, my ability to get around and do what I want to do. But sometimes it's necessary to say, okay, I can find a way to get around. Maybe I can have a spouse, or adult child, or someone like that. And as with your father, and recognizing that we do need some certain aids along the way, and that's okay. It's okay, because to me, successful aging is not just it's not just running the marathon at age 90. Successful aging means managing these setbacks and getting over the setbacks and still staying positive. if living to 100 is not in the cards, well, let's stay positive while trying.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great point, because that perspective does have such a enormous factor on how you feel, on your outlook on the day, on, interacting with people, doing things, because you figure, okay, why not, try it, and see how it turns out. It gives you opportunities.
Yeah. Well, to me, that's the upside,
Yeah.
because, years ago, when we looked into what aging represented, 70s, 80s, 90s, it usually was a dark period, right? We didn't look forward. I mean, our parents, maybe our grandparents, didn't look forward to this, because all they saw was decline and, medical issues and frailty and dependence. And the nice thing is that's changing.
Yeah.
We're really shifting this whole perspective and framing of aging as a positive upside celebration. That's the big deal. Yeah. So, and I like to talk about, gee, there's a lot more opportunities now. There's a lot more doors we can open. We can learn new skills. We can, take some classes. We can maybe pick up a different career that we never pursued in the past. So it's wide open. That's the beauty of all of this. Yeah, there are going to be bumps and potholes, but yeah, we keep moving forward. And I mean, look at the positives about living into our 70s and 80s and 90s, and even more than that. I mean, AARP is now saying, well, gee, maybe we've got half of our lives after the age of 50.
Right. Yeah.
Half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not bad. I mean,
Not bad.
You mentioned an interesting piece of that is there's more opportunities, there's lifestyles. They're building these, if you will, elder care homes that they got all kinds of cafeterias, all kinds of activities. They have trips, they have, outings that you can go on. They organize different things. And, then there's if you need the more in-depth care, there's that as well. But the facilities are getting so that they understand this transition. But what's interesting is you talk about in one of your articles and so forth, you talked about the medications, and if we can touch on that just for a minute, because sometimes it seems that, and I don't know if it's a worker side or if it's a process or a policy side, they want to medicate some of the older ones that can't do much anymore. And it's like they don't want to have to work on them. And I don't think, to me, I think there's more cognitive things they could possibly do. But do you see that in California? Is it more of a staffing issue? Is it a, financial issue? What causes some of that in some of these facilities?
Well, I think our approach in Western medicine is certainly to focus more on the medical care, medical treatment, and medication.
Yeah.
And I've seen that so much in my career, where seniors, anybody, any adults, even children and adolescents, anger or depression or, sadness or problems with attention and memory, there's a pill for that.
Yeah.
And I'm not to minimize that, because I've seen some very powerful effects from medication, antidepressants, anti-anxiety agents. But, I think too quick, it's the knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Well, this person's been tearful. I saw that in nursing homes so many times. Well, she's crying. She misses her children. She misses her home. And, let's give her some antidepressant. Well, sometimes sadness is okay.
Yeah.
It's really okay. That's a human process. We have emotions. We have losses. We have disappointments. And the medication can help. And it takes the edge off. But to my mind, as a psychologist, I've always said, well, it treats the symptoms, but it doesn't give the person any new coping skills to manage their depression or their anger or whatever they're taking the meds for. So alongside the medication, let's teach them some new ways to cope and manage these problems. And I'm just finishing a fascinating book on the effects of exercise and how exercise can really change our moods and lift that depression.
Right.
The book is called Spark by an MD called John Ratey, Raity. And he addresses a lot of the literature that's showing any type of exercise is as effective or maybe more effective than the medication.
Wow.
So, if we're looking at treating depression, let's look at, as you say, some of the cognitive, we have psychological treatments. Cognitive behavior therapy is very effective with depression and, mood problems. And I'm not minimizing
Yeah.
the use of meds, but yeah, there are other approaches. And I think the cognitive approaches tend to be more effective because they're more long-term. And if that includes the exercising and the fitness and the diet changes, those are just smart strategies, whether we're depressed or not. Yeah.
Well, and that leads to the next idea that I had was, um, all around the world, there's these blue zones they talk about, and that they live to 100 and plus in these areas. And ones, I believe, in Nagasaki, Japan. There's one in Greece. I think there's even one in California, isn't there?
Right. Loma Linda, California, Southern California.
Yeah. And, in those areas, what are they doing? These people are, I mean, part of it, I think it's partially the diet, but what else are they doing in those areas that helps them to enjoy and live that long?
Sure. That's a great story, Bob. I love the blue zones. I had last year as one of my guests on a podcast, Nick Butner, who's the brother of Dan Butner, and then he and the two of them have, forged ahead with this blue zones. It's a great story because what they did was, look at the people who lived the longest. Where are the centenarians living around the world? And they found these 6 areas around the world where there are the greatest number of centenarians. And then they go into these areas, as you say, Japan, Costa Rica has one, Sicily, Loma Linda, California, and Greece, Ikaria in Greece. And they found some very common characteristics of the centenarians. And as you said, it's diet. It's eating a lot of the plant-based foods rather than a lot of meat. They do eat meat, but maybe once or twice a month, not a lot of meat. There is a fair amount of, I won't say fair amount, but they do allow drinking, and alcohol is not out of their diets, but 1 to 2 glasses of wine per day. Exercise, and exercise is the big one because they don't go to gym necessarily, but they
Right.
do a lot of physical activity. They walk to the store, they walk to town, they walk up and down the steps, they do their gardening. There's a lot of that kind of physical activity. That's not necessarily the fitness centers that we know, but physical activity is one of those ingredients. And then the one that's really important to me is the social networks.
Yeah.
Having family, having a connection to the community, to their neighbors, and that that connection just offers that continued sense of kind of relatedness and kind of ability to communicate and interact. But beyond that, there's a sense of purpose and meaningful activity, whether it's a hobby or painting or church or any kind of social events that they participate, but that kind of meaningful, purposeful activity, that's really important. So I think the blue zones are great. And, lately what they're doing is bringing in these same kind of beliefs and systems into cities around the country. And they're called blue zones projects. And they go to the city planners and they say, look, here are some things that we've found that can really increase the lifestyle patterns and increase the health of residents. So I think there's like 40 or 50 blue zones projects now around the U.S. So it's a beautiful story, like I said, and understanding. We're getting so much better these days about what we know and what we can do to live longer. And these fitness and diet and activity and purpose, and a lot of these things just they're right on our plate, what we need to follow. And the important thing is that we're all aging, right? These are not just things for 70 and 80-year-olds. These are things for 20-year-olds,
Right.
right?
And that's, yeah,
50-year-olds.
start early.
Yeah, start early. Yeah, and we can avoid a lot of those chronic conditions
Right.
down the road when we put these pieces in place. Yeah.
And that's a good lifestyle education moment for those listening, that you can get out and walk, enjoy the outdoors, start the pattern now. Yeah. And when you're continuing it through your 70s, your 80s, your 90s, then it's interesting that they're doing more of these blue zone projects in cities, and could be part of that.
Yeah,
Want to
that's
be
right.
involved in it.
Yeah, go to bluezones.com and look at, there's a good section there on the Blue Zones projects. And, your listeners may just want to, dig into that a little bit, and maybe they can bring that theme to their cities. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
That's great idea. With the idea of, obviously, when we're getting older, we got to, think about some of these life plans, if you will, because none of us are here permanently. Is that something you get into at all, or is that you just mention that to some clients sometimes about that? You've got to make sure wills are in place, your power of attorney, your healthcare surrogate, and all that.
Mhm.
Those are all things that we need to help plan for.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, those are necessary ingredients to successful aging. I agree. I've had several guests on my podcast talk about this. Recent guest was a financial planner who talked about your financial plan and retirement plan, and he talked about it as if it's it's like managing a big company. If you're the chief executive of a company, you can be the chief executive of your retirement plan, because there are a lot of components and there are a lot of moving parts and there are a lot of people involved, and you've got to stay connected to each of the specialists.
Yeah.
And he said sometimes you got to fire people that are not doing well in your company or in your retirement plan. So another woman I had spoke about successful aging as a solo ager, meaning you have no children or you're living alone, and what additional considerations you have to have as a solo ager.
Yeah.
That was Sarah Geber, Geber. People can go to my website and listen to these podcast recordings. And there are, this is out of my league, of course, but I mean, there are specialists out there who understand all of these necessary steps,
right.
The power of attorney, the living will, the financial planning. And I don't really discuss that so much with my clients, but
right.
There's a lot of information that's available on my website, and I like to have a lot of resources available for people, and they can access a lot of the recordings. In my blogs, I've touched on some of these topics as well. So yeah.
Good. And because that's all part of it. It's part of that, climbing the mountain, if you will. We're taking that one step at a time, and that's one of those steps we have to take, because again, none of us are here permanently. We got to, if nothing else, get it out of the way so it's done. You don't have to really think about it too much once it's done. I think there's more worry that goes into it, the idea of it, than there is actually in doing it. But it's one less thing you have to think about. So then you can be out there doing the fun things and keeping that positive attitude.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's small steps. They're not necessarily overwhelming, but they are small steps and important steps. And each time we take one of these steps, we build up that confidence.
Yeah.
Whatever we're going after, whatever our goal is, whether it's the estate plan or whether it's weight loss or smoking cessation or fitness, those small steps, like you say, getting out and just walking a little bit is better than not.
Right.
So each time we take these small steps, we can build that confidence, and that develops that momentum, and it keeps that ball rolling, which is what we need to change behavior.
And that's always a good thing. It's interesting when I recently I was on vacation and saw older people walking up and down these hills in the area we were in, and it's like, okay, why not? They're out there doing it. Keep at it.
Sure.
Just enjoy it, enjoy the fresh air. The temperature wasn't too hot. They were getting their exercise, and that's inspiring as a younger person. It's like, okay, I can do that when I'm their age too, you know.
Yeah.
So it helps energize another generation.
Yeah. And, at some point we'll say, look, everybody's out walking, kids, teenagers, older adults, we're all out walking. We're all running. We're all, on the bike. We're all doing something physical. And it becomes a norm. And, I wrote this book called Living Longer is the New Normal. And, a lot of it is that, okay, we have a lot more years ahead of us. What are we going to do with it? How do we stay healthy? How do we stay productive?
Right.
Some of it's, I'd like to tell the story of Steve Jobs as we look at aging and kind of starting new chapters. And gee, I was an accountant for 40 years, or, I was, in marketing, or, I did healthcare, or I was a nurse. And now I'm giving up that work and I start something new. So I kind of call it starting new chapters, right? And a lot of it has to do with that mindset that I touched on earlier. And the story of Steve Jobs is really good because it shows how powerful that mindset can be. I read the book by Walter Isaacson. It was a biography of Steve Jobs. And he talked about Steve Jobs being adopted, right? So, yeah, maybe 10 or 12, Steve found out that he was adopted. And he was devastated, right? He just said, how can my biological parents, give me away? I must be so worthless and have so little value. Even my biological mother didn't want me. And his adopted parents found out that, Steve learned about that. And they said, no, Steve, you're wrong, because when we saw you as an infant, you were the most important person to us in the world. And, we couldn't do without you. And it was like a light switch was flipped for Steve Jobs. He went from being completely worthless, unlovable, to now the most important person in the world. And what happened? Nothing. I mean, the adoptive parents didn't give him any new skills. They didn't give him new talent. They just explained it. So think of that light switch that gets thrown, going from completely worthless to, gee, maybe I am really important. And how powerful that mindset is, that we can take on these roles. Think of the 50-year-old or 70-year-old or 90-year-old thinking, well, gee, I can take on a new role. I can write a new script for myself. I don't have to let yesterday define who I am today. I don't have to let my career in accounting determine what I'm going to do tomorrow, or if I'm going to take some music lessons. We can continually redefine ourselves and write that new script because it's our script, right?
That's a great point, is that continued learning. I mean, you see that a lot where older people they'll step away from what they did in their work. I remember my dad, this was back in the mid 80s, and they started, computers started coming out to businesses. He didn't want anything to do with one when he got older, so they shut that off and then they'll do other things, and that's fine. He enjoyed reading, so he'd read a lot, but there's so many things we can learn and grow from all the time.
Yeah, it's easy to stay in that, that comfortable place, that we call it our comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
And we're familiar with it. It's comfortable, it's predictable. I don't want to, learn a new system, or I don't want to have to learn a new language, or have to, learn to drive a different car. So it is that comfort zone, and it's hard to change. It's hard to change because comfort zone is so familiar. It's kind of safe and predictable.
Yeah. I always think of the comfy couch. It's harder to get out of when it's a comfy couch. With the board underneath, it's not so comfy anymore. Then you're going to move.
Yeah. Don't take this couch away. Don't take my lounge chair away.
Yeah.
But the exciting thing is, we can give up that comfort zone and look for the new stuff that's out there and the unpredictable stuff.
And there's so much coming so quick. There's all kinds of opportunities for that learning, for that growing. And I think that's that's great for any age. They're making it easier for people to connect, with sessions like this, all kinds of technology. They're making it easier to use for people so that it's not a big learning curve.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All the stuff we can access now on the internet, the courses we can take. I bought myself a set of drums a few months ago. I never played music instrument in my life, and I go online and I found there's a lot of different ways to learn to play the drums. I haven't found the best way yet to learn, but I'm trying different ways. And yeah, you're right. The courses are, unlimited that we can take and learn new subjects and new skills. And yeah, you're right. There's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, tell us where people can get a hold of you and follow you. Tell us more about your website, your book, if you would, and your podcast.
Yeah, I'd love to. My website is living to 100, LIVINGTO 100.club, not .com or .org, but .club, CLUB. And it's really a collection of a lot of my resources. All my blogs are there, all the podcast recordings. I do offer some online coaching for people I call it resilience coaching, people who are looking to bounce back after setbacks. So people can go there and get more information about the resilience coaching. I also do the public presentations and speaking. People can get a good idea of my topics there, what I like to present on. And info at livingto100.club is a good email address, info at livingto100.club. And, when you go to the website, you can sign up for our email list and you can download what I call my 9 tips for living longer and living well. That's a free download, 9 tips, and it's right on the main page. When you go to the website and sign up for the email list, and you'll get our weekly announcements about the latest podcasts. And then once a month, I do a newsletter. Some good information there. So we'd love to have people, come by and, take a look at the website. There's a lot of good information, a lot of good resources there. Yeah.
Great. We'll make sure we put all that in the show notes too, so everybody has that, because, seeing it, hearing it is one thing, and when you see it and hear it, it just duplicates it, so that be that much, better for people. So we'll definitely put that in there. But Joe, I want to thank you today for your time. Thank you for being a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast. I really appreciate your insight and what you're offering people. I look forward to getting older, and you give that insight that, it's going to be fun. It's going to be okay.
That's great to hear, Bob. I look forward to getting older because it's great. I mean, I'm glad to hear that. And there is a whole big world out there, and there's a lot of information we can access. So I really appreciate this opportunity to be on your program, and I enjoyed the conversation with you. And maybe we can do this again sometime. I'll have you on my program, and we can talk about positive thinking and mindset and getting rid of that negative information and clutter and staying on the right track.
That'd be great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Joe. I really appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome, Bob. Thank you. Bye.